Hello and welcome, I'm Ananya Datta and I'm back with another edition of Race to Power. Let's start talking politics. Here's what's coming up in the next 30 minutes. In the United States, both frontrunners are busy. If Kamala Harris is confused among the last three men standing, Donald Trump is defending his running mate's childless cat lady comment. And taking our story forward from yesterday, Venezuela is in a state of crisis, much worse than before. A day after election results, people have lost lives and also their faith in democracy. Now, it has been 10 days since Kamala Harris announced that she was running for US president. She has put together a team, donors have started showing up, and to Republicans' dismay, turned opinion polls blue. While she might be riding on this wave, she does need a mate for it. And the question is, who will her presidential pick be? It is being said that the announcement is expected in the next 6 to 7 days. And with the clock ticking, the list is also shrinking. North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper and Michigan Governor Whitmer herself have dropped out, leaving a handful of people in the fray. Reports suggest Harris has narrowed her field of possible picks to 3 white men from 3 swing states. A new poll says Navy pilot and astronaut turned Arizona Senator Mark Kelly is being seen as the most favorable one by the voters. Another poll showed Kelly's favorability rating is at striking 25 points better than that of J.D. Vance. Remember, he's Donald Trump's VP pick. The 2 other men widely reported to be in the final are Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. All the 3 states, Arizona, Minnesota and Pennsylvania, are swing states this time. Apart from these, there are also talks ongoing with Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg and the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. Whoever the running mate will be will have to outmatch Vance, someone who has posed his political persona through his personal struggles. Vance's troubled childhood and embracing Christianity late in his 30s have struck a very different kind of chord with core Republicans. He not only appeals to Trump's loyal base but also brings new voters into the red corner. Harris will have to choose someone who brings a better resume. It has been only about a week and Harris and her team have made their campaign strategy clear. She is asking Americans to choose between a prosecutor and a felon, a reference to her legal profession and Donald Trump's recent conviction.
To billionaires and big corporations and end the Affordable Care Act. But we are not going back.
But how much of that narrative will stick with the swing voters needs to be seen. The latest polls puts Trump slightly ahead at 47.6% and Harris at 46.1%. The vice president is expected to be officially nominated as the blue nominee on 22nd of August.
Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening.
Over to the other camp, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump has upped his ante to counter his political rival's rising popularity and swelling election war chest. In response to Harris's ad, the Trump campaign said that it will launch $10 million advertising thrust in the key battleground states. And this is the biggest ad buy from the Red Camp since the month of January. While official campaign funding has a cap on advertising funds, private players with no legal limit on donations have been shelling out millions too. For Trump's presidential campaign, MAGA a super PAC or political action committee supporting Trump has also kicked off a parallel and blitz worth $32 million in 3 battleground states. The new ads are aimed at criticizing Harris expectedly. While the campaign has upped its ante to counter Kamala Harris's popularity wave, Trump himself has his hands full defending his running mate. Just on Monday, the Republican leader defended J.D. Vance after his past remark of childless cat ladies aimed at Harris and other Democrats went viral and drew massive criticism. Backing his number 2, during an interview, Trump said that Vance, who had a tough upbringing in Ohio, was simply trying to show how much he values family life. But outrageous labels and smear campaigns appear to be Vance's specialty as much as they are Trump's. While addressing a joint rally with Trump, the vice presidential candidate slammed Harris on illegal immigration in America. But in his speech, he referred to migrants as illegal aliens, just like Trump.
Kamala Harris is directly responsible for the worst border crisis in this nation's history. On her watch, more than 10 million illegal aliens have invaded our country, and it wasn't by accident, it was by design. Creating this flood of illegal immigration is the purpose of the ultra-liberal immigration policies.
And to take this further, John Potts is joining us live from Boston. He's the professor of political science at Northeastern University. Professor Potts, good to have you on WION again. Thank you for joining us. Let me talk to you about Democrats first. It seems like Kamala Harris has now zeroed down on 3 men from 3 different swing states. What do you think Kamala Harris is looking for in her vice presidential pick?
Well, I think she is looking for someone who can carry some of those swing states, because that's very critical. You know, people refer to Minnesota as a swing state now. I don't know that that's really quite accurate. Minnesota has gone Democratic for decades, but certainly Pennsylvania, where Governor Shapiro is, and Arizona, those are swing states historically, and certainly were in the 2020 election. So, you know, my sense is that those would be the most important, and perhaps, you know, Senator Kelly has a very strong record, you know, military record, an astronaut. So I think he's potentially a top choice there, but we will see.
Right. Professor, speaking of Donald Trump, what is your assessment of J.D. Vance? Do you think he brings more voters or more troubles for Donald Trump?
Well, we're wondering that right now. You're right. You know, historically, vice presidents in general, have often had that responsibility of kind of hitting low, if you will, or making those more pointed critical arguments, and the presidential candidate can kind of speak at a higher level. Trump doesn't particularly do that, but Vance is certainly taking on that role. And the reference you made to cat ladies and the comment that he made there is kind of consistent with his approach. And it's been one that, you know, with the cat ladies in particular, kind of the notion of protecting the traditional family, which is very important in a kind of Republican context.
All right, Professor, thank you so much for joining us on WION and getting us your insights.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's talk about Venezuela now. The country is on the boil in the aftermath of election results and declaration of President Nicolas Maduro re-elected for a 3rd successive term. Massive protests have broken out, with the opposition claiming it has numbers to show that its candidate was the outright winner. The clashes have cost at least 4 lives and injured 44 more. Thousands of demonstrators clashed with the Venezuelan security forces in the South American nation, hours after Nicolas Maduro was declared a winner for another 6-year term, extending a quarter-century of socialist rule until the year 2031. In the capital of Caracas, major clashes broke out between protesters and riot gear-clad national police. At least 2 people have been killed in the capital city itself. The situation in the neighborhood of El Valle and the city of Marque worsened as police used tear gas canisters to disperse demonstrators. Many of them threw stones and hurled objects at the authorities. Protesters in Corotore down a large statue of late President Hugo Chavez, a mentor of President Maduro. And in the pro-government stronghold of Catia, citizens rallied traditionally, banging pots and pans to oppose the poll results.
I came to the street. We want freedom. We are tired of this government. We want a change. We want to be free in Venezuela. We want our families to return here. We don't want them to leave anymore. We want to be free with our families.
Thousands of people walked miles and surrounded the presidential palace, chanting freedom, and they rallied and demanded that Maduro's government should go. Venezuelan President Maduro warned that he knew how to quote-unquote deal with the violence.
We have been following all of the acts of violence promoted by the extreme right. I can tell the people of Venezuela that if they have done harm, we are acting. We already know this movie. So once more, along with the civil, military and police union, we are acting. We already know how they operate.
The electoral authorities said that Maduro won 51% of the votes on Sunday, even as the opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez accused Maduro of underhand tactics and questioned the legitimacy of the counting. Venezuela's opposition leader Maria Corina Machado declared that Gonzalez garnered about 73% of the votes. Venezuelan election results were met with doubt in Washington and other countries who raised concerns on the lack of transparency. It has even led to diplomatic fallouts with Peru, which decided to suspend Venezuelan diplomats, and Panama suspended diplomatic ties. But notably, some countries including Russia, Cuba and China have hailed Maduro's victory. Now, to understand the situation better, we spoke to Renata Segura, the director of Latin America and the Caribbean program at the International Crisis Group from New York. Listen in to what she had to say.
I mean, I think it was fairly predictable that those people that have been allies of Maduro from the beginning were going to, endorse his win with no hesitations. But I think it is very important that in general, Latin America, with the exception of Cuba and Honduras, has taken this position of asking to see the electoral proof before endorsing Maduro. It's going to be very difficult for Venezuela to continue to govern when you have 80% of the population against it and the entire neighborhood. I think we're going to have to very closely watch what happens with Brazil and Colombia, which are the 2 neighboring countries of Venezuela that have more of a stake. Obviously, one of the worries is that if Maduro remains in power and the economic crisis continues, we're going to see a new wave of migration. The governments of Colombia and Brazil are very interested in preventing that from happening. So we know that there are negotiations behind closed doors. Brazil has been very cautious on the way that they presented. The Colombian government has been relatively quiet. So this is the moment when the international community can do really discreet negotiations with the Maduro administration to try and find a solution that is peaceful.
Now, staying with Venezuela, we are also focusing on the fall in the country's bonds after the contested election results. The political turmoil caused by the recent presidential election in Venezuela has the potential to prolong the country's economic isolation and also halt efforts to restructure its debt. Now, tension rose after President Nicolas Maduro declared victory in Sunday's polls, as we just told you, and the ruling Maduro and the opposition leveled accusations of fraud and attempted electoral sabotage. The political turmoil will further isolate the country from global financial markets. It will also postpone actions to resolve the approximately $150 billion in debt due to creditors. Lenders from Wall Street to China are likely to see defaulted bonds, loans and court judgments. Sovereign and state oil firm bonds, which were already trading at distressed levels, fell further. Investors now wait to see how the dispute plays out, reflecting the gloomy market sentiment. After years of economic turmoil brought on by hyperinflation and autocratic policies, the country began defaulting on its debt in the year 2017. Autocratic policies had isolated Venezuela from much of the world even before those defaults. Maduro recently began the long and complicated process of renegotiating Venezuela's debts. After restoring economic stability, he started to re-establish access to international markets. The latest allegations of fraud surrounding Maduro's re-election have further tarnished the country's reputation abroad. The United States, which has sanctioned Maduro and other Venezuelan leaders, has cast doubt on the official count. This implies the country will keep facing challenges reorganizing its billions of dollars in defaulted debt. All right, shifting focus now, the newly elected Labour-led United Kingdom government came raining down on the Conservatives in the latest parliamentary session. New Finance Minister Rachel Reeves has accused the old Sunak-led government of a cover-up on public spending. Now, Rachel Reeves, the Labour leader and now Finance Minister of UK, announced government spending cuts worth over £13.5 billion, which is roughly $17.3 billion. Over the next 2 years, that's. Reeves said that these steps had to be taken in order to mitigate the £22 billion overspend caused by the last government.
Including the leader of the opposition. This level of overspend is not sustainable. Mr. Speaker, the government published its plans for day-to-day spending in the spring budget in March. But when I arrived at the Treasury on the very first day, I was alerted by officials that this was not how much the previous government expected to spend this year. It wasn't even close. This level of overspend is not sustainable. Left unchecked, it is a risk to economic stability. And unlike the party opposite, I will never take risks with our country's economic stability. Yeah. So it therefore falls to us to take the difficult decisions now to make further in-year savings.
She says, Mr. Speaker, the information is new. But she herself told the Financial Times, you don't need to win an election to find out the state of public finances, as we've got the OBR now. Yeah. Paul Johnson of the IFS says the state of public finances were apparent pre-election to anyone who cared to look, which is why he and other independent figures say her argument is not credible and won't wash.
The Finance Minister announced that a full budget will be revealed in Parliament on October 30th and that more difficult decisions are expected, including on tax. After securing a landslide victory in July 4th election, the Labour Party has been raising an alarm over the country's fiscal and economic conditions, blaming the Sunak-led Tory government for worsening conditions of public policy. The Conservatives, on the other hand, have accused the Labour Party of going back on their election promise of not raising taxes. The Conservatives, while rejecting Labour's claim, said that the new government is using the fiscal assessment to lay the ground for tax hikes.
Says the state of public finances were apparent pre-election.
Now, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez declined to take the witness stand in the judicial proceedings into the alleged corruption influence peddling against his wife, Begoña Gómez. Sanchez made use of the legal right of not testifying when questioned by Judge Juan Carlos at the Prime Minister's residence in Madrid. Proceedings are a part of preliminary investigation against Gómez into whether she used her position as the Premier's wife to secure a job in 2 universities. The allegations against Gómez were first made in April by an anti-corruption activist group, Clean Hands. The group is led by a man linked to the far right. Sanchez has denied the accusations against her, saying that they are baseless and were orchestrated by right-wing political force. Now, in the month of April, after a court opened a preliminary inquiry into Gomez, Prime Minister Sanchez had suspended public duties to reflect on whether he should remain in the job. Shortly after, he decided to continue in office. It was revealed that his wife was under investigation. It is the first time a sitting Spanish Prime Minister has been called to testify in a judicial case since his predecessor, Mariano Rajoy, was summoned as a witness in 2017 in a graft case that led to the conviction of several members of his Conservative People's Party and ultimately to a 2018 vote of no confidence that allowed Sanchez to become Prime Minister. And now Sanchez has filed a lawsuit against the judge who summoned him to testify for the probe against his wife. The lawsuit filed by Spain's State Legal Services argues that the judge may have committed criminal activities in his summons, as Sanchez was not allowed to testify in writing as requested by the socialist leader. Now we go across to Germany, where a legal battle ensues over electoral reforms in the country, and that have triggered debates over representation inside the parliament. Just on Tuesday, the highest court delivered a split mandate in the case. The bench approved plans to shrink the country's parliament despite objections from opposition and smaller parties who accused the proposed reform of being unfair to them. As per the ruling, parliamentary seats will now be slashed from 733 to just 630 seats. The new rules abolish extra seats which are awarded to a party based on vote share. Now, this means that candidates will now miss out on a seat in parliament despite being directly elected in their constituency. But in a win for smaller parties, the court declared another provision of the reform as unconstitutional. In the electoral reforms, the government had proposed to abolish a rule that allows representation to a party that has secured less than 5% of the vote as long as it wins in 3 constituencies. However, the court struck down the new law that proposed to scrap this provision and upheld representation. Germany's coalition government, led by Chancellor Olaf Scholz, had introduced the reform law. However, it was challenged by the conservative Christian Social Union and Left Party, both of which benefit from the 5% exception and are currently an opposition party in the parliament. Now it seems like it's the season of satellite summits and successions in North Korea. And the supreme leader, Kim Jong-un, has been making strides when it comes to succession. Seoul's spy agency says the North Korean leader is grooming his pre-teen daughter as his successor to lead the nuclear-armed state. But the rapid elevation of Kim Jae did not happen overnight. Speculations around next successor have been doing the rounds after Kim Jae made her first public appearance 2 years ago. Kim Jae first appeared in North Korean state media in November of 2022 in a puffy white winter coat. Holding her father's hand, she strolled past a nuclear-capable missile designed to obliterate, or as North Korea claims, an American city. Now, she has appeared at weapons tests, state functions, and even at sporting events, always with her father by her side. One of Kim Jae's biggest moments was in February last year. She joined her mother and father at a banquet honoring the military. She was placed front and center in a photo with some of the most powerful members of the armed forces. No other child of a North Korean leader had ever been shown in such a fashion at such an early age. In fact, Kim Jae's appearance has broken the tradition of keeping the leader's children out of the public eye. Now, this has led South Korea's National Intelligence Service to conclude Kim Jae has been designated as Kim Jong-un's most likely successor. South Korea's spy agency has pegged her age at about 11. It believes her to be the second of 3 children between Kim and his wife. However, the daughter is yet to be formally identified by name in official media reports. The role of Kim's daughter in state propaganda shows that there is another generation waiting to run the family dynasty. South Korea's spy agency says, though Kim Jong-un is fairly young, He has been battling several health problems, and this has raised concerns of his succession in the past few years. And with that, we are wrapping up this edition of Race to Power. Thanks for watching with me, Ananya Datta.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Namaste. Hello friends. We did Dr. Subhash Chandra show, popularly known as DSC show, for 4 years, from August 2014 to August 2018. 28 states of Bharat. Of course, we reached out to all of you in 190 countries across the world. The show was very successful. Each episode was being watched by almost 25 million people every week. For past 6 years, the demand of the show has never died down. People write to us, people ask for the show to restart again. Hence, we are beginning the show once again on All Z Network, also on WION, which is the global network channel from India. Again, thank you for your love and affection. See you soon at Subhash Chandra Show.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your